Have you ever been thinking to yourself, gosh, I just don't really seem to be able to have enough time to do the really important things in life? Flying might be one of those things. And you look to other people and you're like, man, they've got to have the same 24 hours as I do, but I'm just not getting as much done, or it's hard for me to make space in my calendar. If that's you, you're definitely not alone. Really, over the last year or so, I've just been kind of noticing this trend towards feeling like I'm getting a lot done, but when I look backwards in the rearview mirror, there's a lot of things that have been left by the wayside, and flying sometimes is one of those things where I'm just not able, I don't feel like I'm able to prioritize some of those things and others as much as I want to. And that's really been weighing on me. And so I've been thinking a lot about, how to kind of move the needle on the important things in my life in a repeatable fashion. And I've kind of come up with this methodology that I think will be really, really helpful to you if you at all feel similar to what I just described. And by the end of the video, you're going to know exactly how that plays out in my life, and so you have an example, and you're going to know how to implement it in your life. Like I said, it's helped me unlock more time in my schedule to fly and do other important things, and I think it's going to do the same for you. Let's start by defining what doesn't work. And really over the last year, and the reason I say the last year is because I left my full-time job about a year ago, and I've been doing this pursuit of self-employment, which has been awesome, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's been going great, but there's some time management things that have needed to change in my life. So what has not worked has been just focusing on what is due the soonest. What is the urgent and important thing in my life that needs to get done? And the reason this doesn't work is that it can give you kind of this false hope or false sense that I'm really getting the important things done because something is coming up, it's due really soon, and I didn't miss a deadline, or I got it done, I got it across the finish line. And that can feel really good and feel like you're really cranking stuff out, but you will usually end up prioritizing this thing that is due the soonest at the sake of all kinds of other things. And I don't just mean in terms of work, but your own health, your relationships, the other important things in your life. And so for me, over the last year, as I've just been stressed with work and really trying to crank out stuff, flying has been one of the things that I prioritize less, which might be kind of weird to say here. I got an aviation channel. But if I'm counting on flying on the weekends or something and stuff comes up, or I'm too tired or weather's bad, it's like, well, it didn't happen. And so things have to change. It can't be this reactive approach of just, hey, what's due the soonest in my life? What feels the most urgent? What alarms are going off the most at work or at home or whatever? And I'm just going to fight those fires. That's a really false sense of productivity. And I think there's a better way to do it. And so we really need a new system that based on what I just described, is moving from being reactive to being proactive. That is so important. And a better methodology also needs to help us get done the things that actually matter. This was a news flash to me, and you might laugh, but I have really realized you just can't get done everything you want to in a given day. There are going to be things, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that just have to get left on the shelf. They just do, and you can't do everything. And so I've been learning that whether it's flying or health or other things I'm about to describe, you really have to be able to prioritize the things that matter. So we want to be proactive, and we want to focus on getting done the things that are really, really important. So that's kind of the what of the methodology that I'm about to describe. So how do we do this? So the first step is defining what are the actual important things in your life that you want to focus on and dedicate your time, energy, effort, and resources towards. I like to think of these as pillars. Like, I'm a visual learner, so if you think about your house being your life, and if it's up on stilts to kind of protect it from the elements, right? If it's up on these pillars, what are the important things that are really supporting your life and keeping you held up to help you accomplish the life you want? And so I would, in this analogy, it's easier to think that more pillars are better, but actually you really don't want more than like 4 to 6 in my subjective opinion, because eventually you start to spread yourself too thin. So what are those small handful of things that are really important that you want to dedicate yourself towards that you feel are really, really, really important? So I'll tell you what mine are here in a minute, but that's the first step, is defining those pillars. The second step is to define the activities that really produce 90% of the results within each of these pillars. So what do I mean by that? Well, this concept comes from an awesome book. It's probably one of my very favorite books by Jim Harmer. It's called Work Energy, and I'll put it down in the description. I can't recommend this enough. And he really argues that in any pursuit, whether it's in work or health and wellness or relationships, there are usually activities that create 90% of the results, and then there's other activities within that pursuit that really just create about 10% of the results. It's an optimization of the 90% effort that you already put in. And so let's give an example. So if one of my pillars is health or wellness or exercise, right? And we can get more specific about what exercise means. There's there's probably a 90% activity within health, and then there's a 10% activity. So a 10% activity and optimization might be vitamins, right? Or getting a little, taking a vitamin D supplement or something. Whereas the 90% effort might just be going and riding my bike, right? Like actually doing the thing that moves the needle for me in exercise. And so if I ride my bike but don't take my vitamin, then I probably still got 90% of the way there, right? But if I took my vitamin but laid on the couch all day and ate pizza, that wouldn't get me to my goal, right? And so there's, in any kind of pursuit, in any of these pillars, there's usually 90% activities that, like, if we don't do anything else to help optimize it, we don't do that last 10%, but we do that 90% activity, then this thing is probably still going to get done. This needle is still going to be moved. And so in each of our pillars, we want to figure out what are the 90% activities, and those are going to be what we call big rocks. The big rocks we really want to move every day or every week, or on some cadence, but these are the big rocks. So step one was defining your pillars. Step two is then figuring out within each of those pillars, what are the big rocks, the 90% activities that are actually going to move the needle in a real way for this pursuit. And then the third step is so important, because you can go through the first step and define the right pillars that are important to you. You can go through step two and figure out what are the big rocks, the 90% activities that you really want to focus on. But if you don't go through step three and schedule your time appropriately, then it's never going to get done, right? And so step three involves blocking off the first half of your available time towards moving the big rocks, and accepting the fact that every other activity, every other task or to-do list within that pillar comes behind and after that big rock. And so what does that really mean? Let me go through an example of my own life of how I've kind of decided how to arrange it, so you can get a better idea of what this methodology means and how to implement it in your own life. So following the steps I just outlined, the first step is defining the important pillars that I want to pursue in my life. And so I've kind of come up with these 5 pillars that I want to make most important in my own life. And so those are my marriage, my spiritual life, exercise, work, and flying. The next step is figuring out what are the activities within each of these pillars that are the most meaningful use of time to dedicate towards those pillars that really actually move the needle and make a difference and make that time spent meaningful. So what are those? Starting out with my marriage, I think the best way I can work on my marriage is spending time with my wife, right? Like I could spend it on other things like, reading marriage books or marriage blogs or coming up with date ideas. Like those are all good things, but those are kind of an optimization that help me spend time with my wife. Like they don't actually replace me spending time with my wife. If all I ever did was read marriage books, but I never spent time with my wife, like that wouldn't work. My marriage wouldn't improve, right? And so you can kind of see the difference between a big rock and an optimization. And so the big rock for me for my marriage is just spending time with my wife. So step 3, we'll get into how to actually schedule that, but for now, that's the big rock in my marriage. And the big rock for my spiritual life, it really comes down to 2 things. One, it's studying the Bible, and then secondly, being involved in my community group. And so again, we'll talk about how to schedule, but those are really the 2 big rocks that really fuel my spiritual life and help me, I don't say move the needle there, because it's not, my Christianity is not performance-based, but you get the idea. Like if I'm going to spend time pursuing my spiritual life, those are the 2 big rocks that I really want to move. Getting in the Word, studying the Bible, and then being part of my community group. My third pillar of exercise, my big rock that I've identified for that is riding my bike 2 times per week. I really enjoy riding my bike, and even if I can just get on it 2 times a week, I know that's not that much, but I can change that goal later on. But for me right now, that feels like a good goal, and so I'm not as worried about like supplements or optimizations of riding my bike. Right, I'm just worried about getting my butt on the bike 2 times a week. That's the big rock I'm trying to move. My fourth pillar of work gets a little bit more ambiguous because in work, you usually have many responsibilities, but oftentimes you can usually boil this down into a couple things that if this doesn't get done, then nothing else matters, right? And so I'll give you an example. For Airplane Academy, probably the biggest rock that I can move here is producing content, producing blog posts on the website over at airplaneacademy.com, or producing more or content here for the YouTube channel, or producing content for the courses that I'm coming out with. So just producing content is the big rock that I can move for my business. And then in my other businesses, there's other big rocks and stuff. But for Airplane Academy, producing content is the big rock that I need to move. And then lastly, the pillar of flying for me really comes down to just being consistently in the cockpit. And so for me, I want to fly every single week. I could be studying for my commercial or my CFI, but if I do that at the expense of actually flying, then that's not going to be a great use of my time. So I want to make sure that I can fly before I do any of those other optimizations. So flying once per week is the big rock I want to move for my pillar of flying. So now I've got the start of a good list of how I want to spend my time in a way that moves the needle for me in a meaningful way, right? And so step 3 comes in, how do you actually schedule your time? And I think this is the most important part, and I think where I've really got it wrong in the past, because you can have really good intentions to spend time in the things that I just mentioned, but if you don't do it or do it in a way that isn't sustainable, then the whole thing just breaks, right? And so step 3 of actually blocking off our time is really the secret sauce to this whole methodology. So you can take this day by day, but I kind of actually like to think about it weekly because you've got a little bit more wiggle room in here. And so we'll go through each of the big rocks that I want to move and start to kind of subtract it from the amount of time I have in a week, which will end up giving you extra time you have to fill in all the other things that come up, all the new things you want to pursue or whatnot. But we want to kind of do it in reverse order to start to figure out how to spend our time. So for my first big rock of prioritizing my marriage, I have found that the best way I can do this is by cutting off work at about 6 or 6:30 every day, so that the rest of the evening I have to spend with my wife. And so I can commit to her, hey, unless really just something comes up out of the blue or there's some crazy deadline and it's going to be a really limited period, every night you can count on me being done by a certain time so that we can have time together. So already off the bat, that puts some fences on when I have to work. I know by that time I'm cutting it off so I can move the big rock of spending time with my wife to support the pillar of my marriage. So in my spiritual life, the big rocks that I mentioned, we're spending time with my community group, which we meet on Thursday nights. And so it's really easy to just go ahead and block off and carve out Thursday nights are dedicated towards that. But then also studying the Bible. And so I like to do that through listening to podcasts or reading commentaries or reading the Bible itself. And I find it's most effective for me to do that in the mornings. I haven't been doing as much of that as I would like to be lately. And so it's something I'm trying to prioritize more. And so in the mornings, kind of before I start work, that is a big rock that I want to try to move in the early mornings. And for exercise, again, I want to ride my bike twice a week. And so it doesn't have to always be in the mornings, but I think it's great to just go ahead and get out there in the mornings. And so we start to fill in the calendar a little bit more. I have some time maybe before I start work to go ahead and get my exercise done. And then for work, I don't really have a specific start time because I'm self-employed, but in the different businesses I'm working on, like Airplane Academy, and I own another company called Boss Club, where we teach kids how to start their first business. Depending on what are the big rocks I want to move for that week, I have started to carve out the first half of my working day towards moving the big rocks that I've identified in the businesses that week. And then meetings and calls and emails and other things really come after that. So that way, in any given work day, like I can make sure that I have dedicated several hours towards moving the meaningful thing that needs to get done in work that day. And then the rest of the things which will always come up, the phone will go off, the emails will show up, everything. Those are going to be unending. You can end up spending your entire day doing nothing but that if you're not careful. And so I've found it more effective to kind of batch those activities together and really push them. I'm experimenting pushing them towards the second half of the day so that the first half of my working day can really be dedicated towards the big rocks. I think that's going to be a lot more effective. In the time that I've been implementing it, it's been awesome. And so I plan to keep doing that moving forward. So whatever your workday looks like, I really encourage you to go ahead and just schedule the big rocks for the first half of the day and then fill in everything else after that. And then for flying, this has been a huge transformation for me that I have really decided that it's such an important pillar of my life that I need to fit it in more than just on the weekends. Because traditionally, I viewed Saturday or Sundays as my time to go fly, but so many things can get in the way of that, right? Like you're traveling or things come up or you don't feel well or the weather's bad or whatever, and all of a sudden a week can turn into 2 weeks, which can turn into a month really quickly, and I don't want to have it be that. And so I have really decided that flying can definitely be a weekday activity for me. It can be, in the morning. It would be a really good use of my time to go fly on a Wednesday morning or something. Because for me, if I look at it on a week or a month basis, that is something that's so important to me that I really want to schedule. And so I've really gone from saying, okay, only flying on Saturdays or something to being able to fly Monday through Saturday. And I want to at least do it once a week. And so I can look and try to see when the weather is going to be good that week. and really make sure that I fit it in. And so I've gotten 5 times more opportunities to fly because I'm just prioritizing it, right? And I know that might be hard to do if you're not self-employed, but like, I just challenge yourself. Like, is it? I mean, do you have the evenings? Can you go fly, you know, 1 evening a week or something? Or can you start getting up a lot earlier before work and go get in a lesson before work? I've known a lot of people who have done that. And so I think it really just comes down to scheduling and prioritizing and not letting all these little things get in the way. And so for me, flying is now a pillar that I want to move every single week. And so that can actually occur on a weekday for me at this point. So now I have a week's worth of activities where I know these are the big rocks that I want to move. And then other opportunities or you know, things that go wrong or whatever that come up, I can fit into all these other times. But if I prioritize those things first and then try to fit in the big rocks, I've found that it just totally doesn't work. It just backfires. And so, you know, at the end of the day, you can't do everything. But I have found that there is a lot of freedom in prioritizing these big rocks first, because you can't get to everything, but at least you have really the freedom of knowing I have gotten done the important things today, and then all these other things are secondary in importance. And so if those didn't get done, at least I got done the important stuff. And so I've really found a lot of joy in that. And so I hope that it helps you. Hope it helps you fly more. I hope it helps you prioritize the important things in your life. So if you have found this helpful, I just want to ask 2 quick things of you. One, would you just give this quick video a thumbs up, a like? That would help me a ton. I'd really, really appreciate it. But then secondly, you can also get more lessons that I've learned and the transparent things that I want to share over at airplaneacademy.com/join, where I've put together a 5-day email course that really just covers all of the most impactful things that I have learned in my many years of flying. And so the good things and the bad things about training and buying an airplane and learning to fly and all this stuff, I really just put it into that 5-day email course. It's totally free. airplaneacademy.com/join is where you can get it. And so I hope that this video and those other resources that I mentioned will be a blessing to you. The different books and links and things that I've mentioned are all down in the video description. So thanks for watching. I hope it helps you in your aviation journey, and I'll see you guys next week.